Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Practical Pet Business. This one is going to spark a lot of discussion, even between Lorin and I. It has been an ongoing discussion because there's so many different elements. And I'm just going to say white labeling is more than just a short discussion. And I know we're going to have many discussions about this. Lorin, you like a lot of elements of white labeling.
From a retailer standpoint, it makes so much sense. And actually, even, we have a mutual friend who owns a distributing company. And I'm been talking with her about that too, because I really think it's in her best interest. It's a way to counter competition, and a way to hold on to and create your own customer base that is specifically yours. And it's also a way to get rid of unnecessary, overwhelming, um, distracting packaging and tags and things like that. So I do love it. But it depends on what it is. You and I go way back when you were a vendor of mine, and we talked about a CBD product, and we talked about the pluses and minuses of white labeling, and I didn't really want to do white label. And y'all were very open to, because it was me and my store, that you were willing to do it. But it was like, yeah, no, I don't want my name on a product like that, because it's a controversial product and a lot of people don't understand it at that time.
Well, and
And
there was a ton of liability as well.
a ton
And
of, well,
yeah,
not even so much liability. I mean, everything is litigious. You can sue for anything, but more of there was so much negativity, potential negativity
sure. Yeah,
that could come
but
with
that's a
that.
liability.
You're
That
right.
that
You're absolutely
that's one
right.
of the,
No, you're right.
and that's one of the things where I will be very cautious about white labeling for the stores and other things is I'll talk about liability just isn't in the actual if something goes wrong with the product.
Hmm.
It's how does it impact your brand?
Hmm.
And you're right. We do agree there are plenty of benefits. And I have been involved with businesses who have done that, some to an extreme,
Yeah.
which can also be a negative and a liability because all of a sudden, the more folks that are doing it, the less, it's that everybody gets a participation trophy. So did anybody really?
Yes.
Um, I understand the reasoning.
You guys
I
send your emails to Rob on
exactly.
that. So
Yeah,
practical
yeah. No, I understand the
practicalpetchat
reasoning.
at gmail.com.
Yeah,
Attention Rob.
but yeah, but the point being is, if you're doing it to be a differentiator, then you got to factor that in
Hmm.
because if everybody's got it, you didn't differentiate, and you just took on a lot more work, a lot more responsibility, and as a white labeler, you're increasing your initial outlay in a different way than you do when you're just taking on the product and purchasing the product to sell. And I think that's part of the element that I've seen where those that do it right, they understand that you understood that. You had the relationship with your customer base that you knew you were going to be asked questions and you would answer those questions. That's why, quite frankly, you were one of the very few I would have ever considered that for different products that I was involved with. From the standpoint of there are many others, I wouldn't even have that discussion.
Right.
And so I think that's that other thing that's incumbent upon the stores, the distributors, the
Well,
vendors.
because when it's your brand on the label, you then become the go-to. You better know everything about it. You better know anything that changes with it. You have to stay on top of it. You almost become a mini manufacturer by perception, to a lot of these companies. You can't get off the hook by just saying, "Oh, I don't know, I don't make it.
Right.
I don't have anything to do with it." Well, you're on the label. It says right here your store name, got your logo on it. What do you mean? Um, and y'all weren't the only CBD company to approach us. And there was another one that we worked with that we loved a lot too. And I was a flat no to them because it wasn't logical, but I see it more happened at that time and still happens. And lots of stores that did really well with it. I wasn't going to be one to take it on, but a lot of stores did it with food,
Oh,
where a manufacturer and several manufacturers in different categories from raw to cooked to kibble approached me and said, would you be interested? And I was like, nope, I sure wouldn't. And they
yeah,
said, why? And I said, because I can't control any aspect of it. I can't control what you're doing, what you're putting into it, where the ingredients are coming from, how it's being made. What about recalls? What if something happens? It doesn't become a recall on your brand, it becomes a recall on my brand.
right,
And I don't get to escape well, I didn't have anything to do with it kind of thing. So the whole thing was off-putting for me. And a couple of these companies were amazing companies. They're not, nothing's foolproof. So it's like, and
You're-
because
yeah,
I lived in California, at the time is like, oh, hell no, I don't want to put my name on something like this. There's just
yeah,
no way. There's too many opportunities for litigation here that I don't want any part of. So I'm good. You can make it yours,
right,
but it's different when it's, when it's I think we did it with a single ingredient treat, and my requirement was that it had to say on the label that it was manufactured by brand for store.
sure.
And things like that, choose.
That I like. Yeah, I like that a lot. Let me be clear there because I also think that that transparency keeps all parties involved
Hmm.
and committed because that's that other part of it. This is a commitment. And I
Right.
love what you said. You're putting your name, your business on that label. You're committing to, you know, deep knowledge, answering the questions. And when things go wrong, they're going wrong on all of it. And
Yeah, and
that's that. Yeah.
I wasn't trying to hide,
Yeah.
who the manufacturer was.
No, no, no.
So
No.
when we were able to, I mean, a couple of the manufacturers like, you're willing to do that? You're willing to say manufactured by us for you? And I'm like, oh yeah, definitely, because it's a quality, you make a quality product. I'm just out to promote my store. And it was fantastic when it came to promos and giveaways and things that you support and holiday timeframes when people would
Yeah.
come in to get gifts because your store logos are all over everything. And you've got a nice basket or a bag put together, and everybody knows where to go to get more. They come in, they go, hey, I got this treat for my dog for, the holidays. Great. Let me take you over here. Oh, I didn't know you had so many options. That kind of a thing. But it says right on the back, manufactured. And a couple people pointed out, well, can I just get it from this manufacturer? Sure can.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to undercut anybody. It was just a branding.
Right. Well, and I'll say where I saw a lot of the problems. The hot trends are the problems.
Yes.
Yeah, because you see many times stores, vendors, etc., will see the hot trend and they're going to white label it, but they don't have the depth. But we saw, and it was one of, not to constantly pick on the CBD world, because definitely a lot of things, whether it's treats, foods, leashes, etc., on down the line, we've seen it go throughout. The reality is, though, there was one manufacturer doing it, and what that caused was a lot of confusion
Hmm.
in the marketplace. And so, as a vendor, you're looking and going, oh, well, what do you have on your shelves? And they go, we got 12 different brands and we're thinking about white labeling. Would you do that? And I'm like, hey, I got news for you. You actually have one, manufacturer with 12 different packaging,
12
notes on.
different labels. Yep.
Yeah, it's like, so how well are you really serving your customer base? Because the pricing was all within $1,
Right.
etc. And so it's like, oh well, we're gonna. It's like, so and there were many manufacturers, and only a few of them, and that's the problem that I sometimes have with this. You do it deeper. So if you're going to look, my advice to stores, distributors, vendors, if you're going to look at white labeling, and I do love white labeling, then do the work and really know deeply what it is they're doing, how they're manufacturing it. This is where we've had discussions in the past where we've gone like, yeah, I want to know that information because if I'm putting my name on it, I'm also probably giving it to, my beloved pets.
Right.
So take that same depth and approach and make sure because that's where I see it go wrong. Where folks, that's where my opinion of white labeling became much more jaded and different because I felt not only did the stores, they were not, done well by this particular manufacturer, but I felt that the whole system had kind of failed itself because the intent was what you said. I believe in this. I'm willing to put my name in it. I'm willing to make the commitment. I'm willing to learn. And I'm going to do it at a different level
Mm-hmm.
than what these other folks were doing. And so all of a sudden, everybody was duped. Wait, what do you mean? And then I'd show them and they'd go, well, this is awful. We thought we had something unique and special here, and we got 12 of the same thing. You
Well,
just
they
have
didn't do the
12 different.
homework. They didn't do
And
their homework.
that's the point. If you're
You
going to
know
go
that
there, do it.
one of the worst white label examples is really an education for me, though. From everything, you should take something and learn from it, even if it's bad. There was a line of flea and tick products that was extremely popular, and we killed with it. I mean, we really did more than fleas and ticks. I mean, it was just like it was amazing for us, and we did really, really well. They got an investment grouping behind them, and next thing you know, of course, the product changes.
Yeah.
And so it's still they had done really well with their branding and they were readily recognizable, but the product changed and they weren't upfront about it. Um, we had several interactions that got progressively worse due to a lack of transparency. So I happened to be at Super Zoo one year. It's a trade show for the pet industry that most everybody knows about on the West Coast. And I'm in another brand's booth saying, I'm looking for something different because I've been carrying this line and I'm just not happy with their lack of transparency. And the guy's listening and I'm, unhappy about how the whole thing went down and trying to make it clear that if you don't want to be transparent, that's fine. You don't have to be, but I need to know. So if we're not going to be able to do business, just tell me now and I'll move on. Um, I get all done and he goes, yeah, we white labeled that product for them. I'm like, what? And he says, we white labeled the product for them before they got investment. And I was like, so I can get the exact same product the way it used to be here? He said, yep. I said, do you have proof of that? And he says, yep. I said, great. Email me so that I know that what you're telling me is legit just because I'm gun shy. Want
Sure.
me to sign an NDA? I'm happy to do that, but I'm not just going to take your word for it. Sorry, man. But I'm not just going to take your word for it. And they were the white label company for it. The other company is still thriving, doing really well, just didn't work for me. I wiped out everything I had from the first company and moved over to this other brand. And that's kind of the point, right? If you expect a brand to be a certain way, how many times have we all gone, there's changes? Nope, 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 there's not. Well, the reason they couldn't really speak to it is because they never made the product to begin with. They didn't learn about the product really well. And they couldn't speak to the changes that were made subsequent to investment because they also didn't learn about that in depth. They really were in it for the profit and they did great at that. But that's where it comes back to who are you dealing with? Are you dealing with a middleman? Are you dealing with the original brand? If you're representing the brand, you better have that level of knowledge because somewhere along the line, you're gonna be asked to talk about it. So,
And I think you bring up a really good point here because, especially with all the M&A mergers and acquisitions that we've
mhm.
seen, and it just continues to explode.
Ugh,
It's not just one part of that white labeling that is being impacted by that type of thing. It's across the board. It's the ingredients, it's the packaging that's available, it's the,
co-packer.
so many different elements. And so again, I've seen it go, multiple different ways. But it is a commitment, can be a very good one, can be a very profitable one. I've seen it be tremendous. I've seen it launch other businesses, but I have also seen the inverse of, wow, this was really a bad decision for a variety of reasons. So I'll just say, for me, when I'm looking at the white labeling, um, also, how does it fit in with your store's overall, direction? Because that's another thing that's kind of, gotten a little bit where folks have, I've seen this like it's like CBD. Everybody had to have it. And so
Right.
everybody wants white labeling and everybody wants it, everybody. And I'm just like, why do you want it? I've had a number of folks call on the consulting side and say, hey, is there an opportunity for us? Do you know somebody where we can white label X, Y, and Z? I'm like, why do you want to do that? Aren't you this type of store? How does that fit into your brand? Well, we feel we could. Okay, and that's fine. By the way, your reason is your reason, and I don't want to say there are no right reasons or wrong reasons. What I will say is your reason, but you've again got to circle back and go, okay, is this really going to fit what we're doing? Because when you white label, you've got all these extra costs, not just the product, not just the manufacturer.
Right.
You've got, okay, well, minimal marketing. Well, I'm just going to have it here. Okay. What about your, insurance policy?
Just
Oh,
gonna say that.
yeah.
Yep.
Well, wait, that covers it, doesn't it? No, not
Nope.
necessarily. And most likely, no. And what happens if, as you brought up earlier, there is a recall or there is a change in the ingredients? Do you know what the steps are notification wise?
Mhm.
Is there a, adverse impact and who do you need to report that to? So it's not as just simple as, well, I want my own, so I'm going to white label. It's here's why. It's kind of like in our discussions when we talk about the folks that say, I want to get into the pet business. It's real easy to get into the pet business. It's real easy to become a pet parent. It's hard once you're in it to fix the early mistakes.
Right.
So I hope that you and I are illuminating for some folks some of the things here as they're thinking about that, because I do agree with you. It can be a tremendous boon and foundation piece for your business, no matter what side you're on. I think it can be tremendous, but you got to do it right.
Yeah. Right from the beginning.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot of other areas. Is there anything else you want to hit on? We got a few minutes left, but I think this is just a great starting point for us on the white labeling. I know we're going to have more discussions, from how to do it right to, hey, here's things that we see and hear that have been going wrong.
There's more companies open to it now than there used to be. Before when you'd bring it up, there'd be oh, I
Right.
don't know, I'm gonna have to check on that. And the cost was way more prohibitive before. Now it seems like everybody's like, or they're flat. No, we don't do that. Okay, cool, perfect. Um, but there's a company that does an amazing line of chews that is like we have to put a label on it, whether it's ours or yours or anybody else's, doesn't matter to us. So there's almost a negligible cost to it. And of course there's the cost, like you mentioned, insurance and the cost of commitment and that kind of thing. But our mutual distributor friend, she was talking to a company about doing something like that, and the offer that was made was exorbitant on the per item plate
Yeah.
costs
Well,
for printing.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, I'd be a no on that. That is not worth it, you
Right. And
know?
I was going to bring that up. And then there's also the additional so when you say there's more folks willing to do it, there are more folks willing to do it than ever. However, I've also seen the minimum quantities requirements
Ridiculous. Yeah.
also going up higher than ever. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll get into that in future episodes. But you're correct. That's that point of it, right? It sounds good. It sounds easy. And their response, oh, we just got to slap a different label on. Oh, wow, that's great. Let's do it. Okay, so we're going to need your, label design, and we've got to print a minimum of 10,000 of those.
Right.
And you want that shrink wrapped, or do you want that in a barrel sent to you where you do your own packaging? There are
Right.
all of these different elements that will work into that you've got to figure out. So if you're not sure, they'll certainly help guide you through. Folks like Lorin are a great
Well,
resource. But the bottom line is it's something that you've got to put more thought in other than, wow, we're selling a lot of this. I wonder if we could do it ourselves. Because the answer is undoubtedly yes. You just have to find the folks that will do it for you, which frankly, a lot easier these days. And then it's oh,
well, and
because,
some of those companies too, they'll send it to you with no label on it and they'll say, yeah, go ahead and put your own labels on it.
right, because they're not liable for any part of anything
Right.
once it's left their door.
Right.
And
You
so
go ahead
you've
and
got
put
to
your own
understand.
labels on it and you call your printer and your printer gives you all the bad news and and then it doesn't change your quantities, but it's more cost you have to figure in. So,
Right.
do you raise the price of the treat or the item and then is it worth it? So
Right.
there's a lot to look at. I'm still a big fan of it. I've had good experiences
100%.
with it, but it was all of that. That's what we're talking about here is all that stuff that gets learned
Yeah.
along the way
Yeah,
of
and I
doing
think
it.
I think you make a good point. So maybe we end with the positives of it,
Yes,
which is it does really start to build a strong foundation, not just for your brand or your service, but with your customer base. And these days, more and more customers are really tying themselves in deeper with those that they work with, whether it's purchasing, products, purchasing services. So white labeling really helps build a deeper relationship.
hmm
And I agree with you. I in those elements, I really love it. I think it can really help strengthen your business positioning almost more so than many other things.
right.
So
Agreed. To be
yeah,
continued.
to be continued. There are so many things. I love it. Hey, if you out there, if you've done some white labeling, let us know what your experiences are. What were the, positives? What were some of the concerns that you had? What are some of the things you've seen as it's been evolving in the background for you? Would you do it all over again? Send that to us. We'll share it. We'll certainly keep your name out of it if you want. But
Definitely.
from the standpoint of let's make this community help each other in a lot of different ways. That's why we're doing these things, right? So send that to practicalpetchat@gmail.com. Thank you all for your time. We know you've got a lot on your plate. We appreciate just being a little sliver of that occasionally.
Thanks, guys.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.